And hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Exceptional Experience Podcast, an ECAC podcast. I am one of your hosts, Billy Pickens, and I'm joined by my good friend, Maya Warren. Maya, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Billy. I'm glad to be back for another episode.
Yep, same here. I've been getting outside. It's been beautiful weather out there, so I've been enjoying the weather, and getting outside and enjoying life. And that leads us into today's topics. And Maya, would you like to tell the people what we're discussing today?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about leisure, specifically trying new things as a person with a disability. Um, and that can be an enjoyable experience once you get past maybe the newness of it. So I'm going to show some brief pictures of me doing a couple of things. So last year, I got to attend a family ministry camp called Fort Wilderness. And for those who don't know, I've been an avid fisher for the majority of my life. And, I pretty much live in North Carolina and not being able to drive. So most of my fishing has been in the state for the most part. But the camp is held in Wisconsin. So we were able to go there. And one of the gentlemen there took us out on the lake where he lives, and we went fishing, and I caught my first bass in Wisconsin.
Nice.
Um, and then, so that picture was of me sitting in a boat, holding up a sizable bass that I got to catch. This next picture is we're outside in the woods on the ranch at this same camp. And the cool thing is, I'm sitting on top of a large brown horse. And the thing about this is, most people have had some sort of horseback riding experience where maybe someone was leading the horse, like in this picture. Um,
Yes.
but I actually got to learn free riding. So I got to weave in and out of cones, of course, all provided wearing a helmet, trotting, doing some cantering, a few leaps here and there. And then here's a picture of me standing next to the horse I was riding, Big Jake, and my two teachers that I had that led me and a couple of other members of the group through the exercises for the week. And I share that to show, like, I'm pretty sure for the viewers who heard me describe those images and for those who saw the images, you're probably thinking, wow, that's awesome. That's really cool. That sounds so brave. But what you don't know is um, at the camp, there's like a room or facility where you can go to sign up for the activity you want to be a part of for the week. So I go and I'm looking at, the activities because my family's describing them on the wall. And as I'm looking, I see horseback riding and trail riding on the wall. And, the thought crossed my mind of I would love to do that. And then shortly behind that thought was, I don't know. That seems a bit
Right.
audacious or daring for something I've never done in that capacity. But I signed up anyway.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my adopted family, I was like, I signed up, but now I don't want to go. I don't want to go. So I challenged myself to take it one day at a time. So I showed up the first day, and it was an interesting experience because what I didn't know is the horse that I got paired up with, Big Jake, was the largest horse and the most stubborn horse. So when
Wow.
the head of the wranglers found out that I was like learning to ride
Just
on
got
him,
thrown right in.
yeah, they were like, "All right, okay, all right, this all right." They kind of had like that tone of voice of like, "Oh, well, maybe that the teacher knows what she's doing and pairing them together." And I didn't know that until my mentor like mentioned that to me because he overheard the conversation while I was in the ring like doing my lessons. And so each day I was learning new skills and kind of like building my confidence. But I'd be lying if I say every time I showed up to the lesson I was confident. I wasn't.
Yeah.
um but then the week end of the week came and lo and behold, like, it was over. and I got a certificate for the hours that I trained. And it just felt very like I accomplished something, right? Something that I didn't expect to accomplish. And I do a lot of service. Professionally and just personally, I do a lot of serving my communities. And
Yeah,
so I'm working on being more intentional about doing leisurely things, like things in my free time that can lead to serving others, but are just by the nature of them fun, right? So
right, right.
the horseback riding lessons was an extreme example of that. And in college, I took rock climbing and rappelled off a 55-foot wall. Again, another situation that I signed up for kind of head first. But then there are also other things like challenging myself to within my budget find one thing a month that I want to go and do event wise, or even one thing I do is every so often I buy a Nintendo Switch game and I just
Yeah.
enjoy playing that. So what are some examples of things that you um, have challenged yourself to do, Billy, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
new activities?
Oh yeah, it's interesting you say that. And before I get into that, a couple things I wanted to touch on from what you said. You talked a lot about, well, for one, I enjoy a lot of things you enjoy, like fishing and horseback riding. Haven't done either in a while, but you definitely giving me some ideas here. But I think that what you touched on is really, taking your time, taking one day at a time. And I know I'm someone who, I'm very adventurous. I love the outdoors. I love trying new things. I want to skydive. That's one thing on my bucket list that I want to do that I haven't done yet. And there are definitely a lot of other things. We'd be here all day, but I do love traveling. I love being having adventure. But I will acknowledge that I do struggle with some anxiety. I struggle with, uh, you know, not always being confident, like Maya was talking about, in different situations, and not necessarily being ready for certain things. And it's like you said, I mean, it's important to take one day at a time. So I may show up to a camp, or I may show up somewhere and try something and say, oh, I don't really care for it. Um, and, that's okay. Or I may show up for the first day and just watch it. Lots of what I'll do is I'll watch other people do it and see what their reactions are. Or I'll get to know the person that's in charge. Like if I'm horseback riding, if I have time, obviously, I'll get to know the person. Like, hey, um, you know, what, how does this work? Can you explain to me how all these things come together? Can you explain to me, some of the risks of doing this or things like that? And if I feel good about it, then yeah, I'll give it a shot. And so I really think you touched on that. But as far as examples in my own life, um, I was telling Maya off camera, I recently tried yoga. Well, I've done it before many times, but I recently committed to it, and it was very interesting. Like it was chair yoga. I did it at the Y where I live every week, and it was interesting because there's a lot of different moves. Got to be very flexible, which I kind of am, but maybe not the greatest flexibility. But it was really good. Like it really. Um, made me feel good. And sometimes it definitely made me bend certain ways, that I was like, I don't know if I can do it. But if the good thing about yoga, at least, what I've been told is that they never force you to do anything you don't want to do, so there's something you're not interested in doing, or there's something that you feel like is too much for you. They say, hey, try this. And I think that can really describe a lot of leisure, is that you shouldn't feel forced into doing anything. Miles was talking about service. Service can come in many different forms, and so if you're someone like I have friends who their version of leisure may not be their version of leisure, horseback riding or fishing. Like their version of leisure may be watching anime and playing games, and that's okay. And I think that we as a society don't put too much pressure on people to always be part of something, join a club or do this. Even when I was in school, I basically had to join a club because the way my college applications were working out, they basically frowned upon anybody that didn't really have any involvement in anything that wasn't school, you know. Even though like my education academics took up a big part, which part of me regrets that, not so much joining a club, but like making more friends and meeting people that were like minded in high school, which I did make up for in college. But um, yeah, I think that you really touched on that and really finding what suits you and what makes you happy. And yeah, definitely be willing to stretch your boundaries and step out of your comfort zone and try something new here and there. But do it
Yeah.
at your own pace. And I love that Maya touched on do it at your own pace. You don't have to feel like you're pressured into doing things just because society wants you to be outside all the time.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that to elaborate a little more. I advocate more for doing things that are two, one, if not both, but bring joy, because happiness is a fleeting thing. Joy is a
Yes.
choice that we make, and that are beneficial for you, right? So not everything that makes you happy is beneficial for you. So that's why I advocate more for joy, especially regardless of how introverted we are. Like, I'm introverted, I tend to be a little more introverted than most people think.
Yes.
um we need people, and in light of our recent episode of building relationships, part of doing leisure activities and trying new things, what helps you get into doing new things, um is doing it with people.
Yes.
And if everything that I tried, and I've done a lot of things, I waited until I was comfortable to try something new, then it would never get done. Because if I had not
Yeah.
embarked on that new situation or that new opportunity, I would have never met the people that I ended up learning that skill or opportunity with. So one thing I would say to parents, because I get this question a lot, like, how do I help my kids self advocate? How do I help my kids, develop and figure out what they're passionate about? Like, continue to provide exposure to things that you see interest. So I know the city of Mooresville is really good about hosting events at their library where they have like Lego play dates where kids from all over the area can come and just build Legos together. So if you know your kid loves doing that at home, that could be an opportunity. Or if you know your home is kind of like a safe space, right?
Yeah.
Where you have sensory considerations and accommodations built in, being able to connect with people in the safety of your own home, that is also a thing that is I think very beneficial and plausible, because you can't get away from people, right?
Yeah.
But what you can do is learn to help your child, or if you're a young person with a disability, learn to embrace your disability and your just being built different and what that comes with. Because the more comfortable you are with you, the more you'll be able to enter these new circumstances, new opportunities, new activities, new decisions, with a little more confidence, and you're less concerned about the what ifs. And that's what a lot of anxiety is for us. It's we feel out of control. So in lieu of feeling out of control, we're ruminating on our thoughts, which are the only thing that we can control. And it gives us a
Yes.
sense of odd comfort to just keep ruminating on the what ifs, because now, like, oh, I didn't think I was gonna have to calculate asking for help in this area. And it's like this flurry of thoughts, right?
Yeah.
It's a flurry of thoughts that if we would just go ahead in spite of the anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Courage is like doing the hard thing even when you're afraid. Um, like, if we would do the difficult things and the things that seem uncomfortable, like on the other side of that is growth. And I
Yeah.
talk to a lot of parents who have children with disabilities. Um, and the thing that they get so focused on helping their kids survive, or their young person in their life survive, that they forget, oh, like, I need to be investing time, like teaching my child how to experience new things, leisure. And the world of disability can be daunting in light of IEP meetings and 504s and getting medical insurance and SSI and SSDI, like the whole thing. But I
Yeah.
think there needs to be more advocacy around, like, creating spaces that help family just breathe, so that they can experience leisure activities together with their child. So that there's not this
Yes.
association built towards your child of just stress. And because, disability comes with a lot, just as any other lived
As it
experience
is.
comes with a lot. And
Yeah.
so when we separate it and make it seem like we're the only one, we really get anxious, and we really get isolated, and we really start closing ourselves in. But if we learn to recognize, like, somebody out there is probably experiencing this, and working on building the muscle of reaching out, even though it feels uncomfortable, like, that helps too. And I'll give an example. So I've been an avid fisher my whole life. My grandmother taught me when I was younger. And in High Point, North Carolina, every year they still have, um, two events. So one is the youth fishing derby, but before that is the Teach a Kid to Fish Day that's held at the High Point City Lake in Jamestown. And so for about 15 or 10 or 12 so years, I was a part of it. So I've got multiple trophies from catching the largest fish, the
Mm-hmm.
most fish, that thing. And so the Teach a Kid to Fish Day is basically a 3 to 4 hour event where the first portion is dedicated to educating the kids and taking them through activities on how to bait a hook, playing different relay games, getting them immersed in what it's like to fish. And then the rest
Yeah.
of the is the actual fishing tournament. So I went through that for a little over a decade, and then I aged out at the age of 15, and then I started volunteering.
Wow.
So I was comfortable being a participant, but something in me was like, I want to still be around this even though I'm aged out. So I ended up becoming a volunteer. And so I did that for a couple of years, even into my college years. And like I and it always tickled me because parents would watch. My main station was teaching kids how to either tie a hook or bait a hook, and
Yeah.
parents bring their kids, but they would secretly like want to ask me questions as the parent about how to do this because they didn't know how to fish, but they didn't want to admit it while their child was around. So I would always teach it to the child, but then like I'd always have this look on my face and I'd communicate that I'm also teaching the parent and felt safe. I helped them feel safe enough to learn at the same time. And I did that for a few years. And the first year I did it, I was nervous. I wasn't sure if I had what it took. I just knew I
Yeah.
was passionate about fishing, all things fishing, from the technique to the basics. And I leaned on my passion for fishing, more
Yeah.
so than focusing on all the people I was going to be talking to that day. Um, and it ended up working out. And then in 2018, I became volunteer of the year. And so when we think about trying new things, um, it should never be with the expectation of like, oh, I'm gonna play football for the first time and win a championship. No, 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 no. We're just trying, something new to gain exposure. And if there's this passion that comes from that, which for me, that passion ended up leading me into service and serving other people and teaching them and fishing, like that's great.
Yeah.
But you want to build up skill sets. At that same camp that I mentioned earlier, I got to try archery first for the first time. And then when we got back home for the next 2 months, I couldn't stop thinking about how awesome it felt to hold
I
a
haven't
bow
done
and arrow in
archery
my
in years. I'd
hand.
love to do archery again. Yeah, that was for cool.
Yeah, like how I couldn't, get it out of my head how good it felt to not have to find something sport related or activity related where I didn't have to rely on my eyes,
Right.
being visually impaired. So I ended up buying a bow and arrow set a couple months afterwards, and I've been doing it ever since. And in July, it'll be a year of me doing archery just for the fun of it. Like I'm not anticipating being in any like competitions. If that happens,
Yeah.
woohoo! But for now, I'm just enjoying challenging myself um, with an adaptable sport.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that about the connection with people and teaching people because one of my, I don't want to say secret hobbies, but one of my more lower key hobbies is that I enjoy dancing. I haven't done it a lot in a while, but I do enjoy doing it. And I used to when I was in college. I went to this dance class, and at first, I mean, I like dancing, but when it comes to like a lot of the choreographed stuff, I was like, I don't know about this. All the different steps you have to learn. I wasn't so much nervous about it, but as I was like, this is gonna be boring because I've got to follow a rule book of step this way and step that way. But I went there, and there was this teacher, and she was so nice. She was like, welcome, and she really like made me feel included, and she did like one-on-one work with me where she would say, hey, are you good at you can try this, and this is too much, that's okay, we can start with this today and then work on this next week. And I became not to toot my own horn here, but I kind of became one of the better people in the class, but not because of my own doing, because she actually took the time to work with me and teach me, and also make me feel comfortable about it, and make me feel like it wasn't a chore, it was fun. We did all kind of different dances and uh, different cultural dances. It was really fun. So I mean, and I'd also met a lot of great people through that. Um, and so yeah, and really by connecting. And it's interesting. You also say that as people with disabilities, we struggle a lot with removing ourselves. And I talked about that even when it came about academics. I always kind of felt like I had to overachieve to make up for the fact that I was wholly blind. But also, recently, and you talk about becoming a volunteer at your fishing station. I feel like you and I both, especially, we didn't become advocates at first by choice. We became advocates because we were called into it because of our own experiences. And I love being an advocate. I love helping other people. Yeah, there are definitely times when I just want to take the advocate. Somebody asked me at a meeting once. They were like, "Do you ever get tired of doing this?" And I'm like, "I don't." But there are definitely days when I just want to take that hat off and just be Billy for a day. Not Billy the advocate, not sort of any major identity thing. Just go have fun and do things I love doing, and that's even down to just talking to friends about sports or music or something like that, or watching a show that I love, or going for a walk on the treadmill, or like you said, going fishing or archery or horseback riding, just things that make me happy. So I think that's really important, and we should no one should feel forced to feel like they have to do anything. And I think that's what's uh, one of my biggest takeaways from this conversation has been is like um, leisure is about having fun and doing what you love, but don't get so lost in what you have to do. It's make it what you want to do, make it what makes you happy, um but also make it social, make it something that you feel like you can meet people. And if you do want to meet people, obviously if you're someone that's you know is not interested in that, then that's okay. I mean, it's good to connect with people. We should have people, but I definitely know people that are more reserved, and that's fine. But always try to strive each day to uh improve, and always just try something different. Even something that may worry you, or it may scare you, or may make you nervous. And if it doesn't work out that day, that's fine. Or if it doesn't work out ever, that's fine. But at least you can say that you went out there and at least tried it.
Yeah, and I think mainly I want to emphasize doing things that bring you joy, not things that
Exactly.
necessarily make you happy, right? Because
Exactly.
happiness is an emotion and it does not last because life happens. Joy is a choice. It is a journey. It is something that we get to continue to pursue, and it's an intrinsic thing. A lot of things that make us happy tend to be extrinsic or sources from outside of our particular purpose or the way we were wired. So I would say that. Um, and I want to encourage the parents, in particular, don't lose hope, because you never know what would land. I was talking to a good friend of mine who is like a sister to me, and she's a parent of three kids, and her and her husband do a good job of exposing their kids to different opportunities without an expectation of how that exposure will land. So you might not see the fruit of that exposure right now, because parenting, there's a lot of delayed gratification in parenting. Like you won't know, if not now, but decades from now, how it lands. So I would just say, like, keep going, right? Keep bonding with your kid over video games. Video games help release endorphins and provide a source of mental health as well, within healthy boundaries, as anything does. If your kid, or your child loves being outside or gardening or sewing or welding, like finding ways to connect with your child around the things that they're passionate about. And it's not something that you necessarily have to be an expert in, right? I live with my family of choice, and their
Yeah.
youngest son, who is like a younger brother to me, he's 7, and he's really into Pokemon. I don't
Yeah.
know how people who are into Pokemon remember all the evolutions and the genuses and the binomes. I don't
Oh,
know,
trust me.
but
They
he
they
doesn't. And I told him the other day, I was like, Royce, Miss Maya does not know all the details, but I am willing to listen to you if you want to. So sometimes I'll just sit down in the living room and watch him play his Pokemon Scarlet or Violet game, and he'll just go on for
Yeah,
minutes on end. And I don't think we understand the gift that our presence brings to the young people in our lives as they're
yeah,
learning what they're interested in terms of free time, what they're gifted in. Like, you don't got to be an expert. Um, but what it is a beautiful thing to see is you being present and available. And if you're aware of resources, being a co-advocate with your child and making other people known about what they're passionate about, and that can lead to opportunities for them to flourish in those activities as well. So on that note, Billy, I would like to say one last thing to the young people before you close us out, and then so to my fellow young adults and youth with disabilities, I just want to say, if you've been doing your best to step outside of your comfort zone and it didn't have the event or the opportunity didn't go the way that you thought it should, it's okay. Like the important thing is you took the step. So one thing I want to tell you is to keep going, right? To keep going. Life is not meant to be easy, but what the beautiful thing about life is, it's a journey, right? So it's not like oh man, I was in my head at that party or that event or that opportunity to be around the majority of my family, like a family reunion, and I think I had a moment. It's okay, like you were there, and you're still learning to be present, just as you are in terms of how you were created. So keep going, even though things that are good for you can be difficult or um, uncomfortable at times, like keep doing the right things. And I hope that everyone has enjoyed this conversation. I think we can go on and on, but without further ado, Billy, I'll have you close us out.
yeah. And I completely agree with Maya, what she said, and also one more thing before we close out, I was going to say, uh, if you're a parent, or even if you're someone that helps people with disabilities, when you present, do opportunities to them, make it an invitation. I think sometimes words matter, and sometimes we get lost in communication of you have to do this or you should do this or this, make it an invitation. Like, I see that you're interested in Pokemon. Would you like to try something, related to that will help you connect with other Pokemon lovers? So make it more of an invitation to no one. They don't feel forced to do anything, but they also feel open minded to trying new things. So that's one thing I will say. But with that being said, thank you all for listening to the Exceptional Experience podcast, an ECAC podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Exceptional Children's Assistance Center, where we empower families and improve lives. You can reach out to us and call us, check out our website. And with that being said, thank you for listening. Remember to glow and shine. And from all of us here at ECAC, we will see you next time.